Oh yes, this Honorable Superior Court for the County of Wake is now convening and sitting for the regular dispatch of business. The Honorable Judge G. Brian Collins, present presiding. Oh yes, God save the state. This Honorable Court, please be seated.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Mr. Sheriff. I want to welcome everybody to this special ceremonial session of the Wake County Superior Court. Especially want to welcome those of you who don't come to the courthouse very often. It's a great honor to have you here. It's a very important part of what we do in our court family to remember those who aren't with us anymore. Those of you who are here as their family members, we probably saw them more during portions of their lives than you did. So thank you for sharing them with us. At this time, I want to turn the program over to the President of the 10th Judicial District Bar, Maria Lynch. Yes.
Your Honor, family and friends of the honorees, and members of the Memorials Committee, on behalf of the 5,700 lawyers who are members of the 10th Judicial District Bar, we welcome you to this very special session of the Superior Court. Today, we gather to remember and to honor 4 members of our bar for their lives as lawyers. Thank you for joining us. I will now turn the program over to Brian Oten, who is the chair of the Memorials Committee.
Your Honor, Madam President, members of the bar, family, and friends. As Maria just said, my name is Brian Oten. I'm the chair of the Memorials Committee for the 10th Judicial District. And on behalf of the members of the committee, I want to welcome you all to what will be a very meaningful and truly special session of Superior Court. These special sessions, I believe, are integral to the fabric of our bar. I always walk away from these special sessions feeling encouraged and inspired about our profession and our community. And to that end, I want to express our sincere thanks to the family members that have agreed to participate in this special session and will allow us to recognize these 4 incredible individuals in this way. For those who have previously attended these special sessions of court, my words will sound familiar, albeit delivered with far less eloquence than my predecessor, but I do believe they bear repeating. Today we gather not to mourn, but to remember 4 important members of our legal community, to honor their contributions to our profession, perhaps even share a laugh or with a funny memory or learn something new about an individual that we've known for some time. And most importantly, to reflect upon and be inspired by the impact that these individuals had not only on our professional lives, but our personal lives as well. With that, our first honoree is William Henry McCullough. Mr. McCullough will be presented by Bill Pappas.
I'm Bill Pappas, a partner with Parker, Poe, Adams, and Bernstein, and I have the great honor of saying a couple of words about my partner and friend, Bill McCullough. Bill grew up as the oldest child of a Lutheran minister in South Carolina, and that particular undergirding gave him an abiding love for God, family, and church, and we'll see that those are themes that run through Bill's life. Bill graduated from Lenore College, now university, and he had a great many achievements as an undergraduate. Later in life, Bill would serve a number of terms as a trustee of Lenore College. But to tell the truth, his greatest accomplishment was courting and marrying one of his classmates, Jeanette Gardnell. Bill McCullough was true to his roots because the engagement ring that Jeanette had came from Bill selling Bibles door to door in order to earn enough money to get that engagement ring. Bill and Jeanette had a wonderful 58-year marriage, produced 3 lovely daughters, Laura, husband Paul, Judge Paul Ridgway, Linda, husband Richard, and Mary Beach, husband Mark. Each daughter has the abiding and wonderful talents of their father and their mother. They're very accomplished people. The apples of Bill's eye were his 3 grandsons, Isaac, David, and Samuel. And that may be sort of a continuing theme here because those were three significant Old Testament prophets. So the biblical images continue. I don't know how much Bill had to do with that, but there it is. Bill was completely engaged in constant involvement with his family. He was there when things were difficult. He was there to celebrate milestones and achievements. There are a number of great stories of the McCullough family and everything that Bill organized with them. He was a great organizer, including their 50th anniversary trip to Vancouver, where they took the entire family. Bill's dry and sometimes eccentric sense of humor was always in play with his children. He would often call them and say, "This is your father, William H. McCullough, initiating a call." Once, Jeanette was out of the house and prepared a casserole for them, and left it in the oven, all cooked. One of the girls took it out of the oven, put it on top of the stove, didn't notice that the burner was on, and sure enough, big crack, not a very good sound. Bill shows up there, looks around, and starts to put the food out, and he looks at the girls and says, "Chew carefully." Bill lived by the motto, "Waste not, want not." Bill had a distinguished 52-year legal career. He graduated from UNC Law School with honors. He was on the Law Review board, and after starting practice in Gastonia, his practice was interrupted because he was called up to the United States Army during the Cuban Missile Crisis. In the mid-'60s, Bill came to Raleigh and joined a fledgling firm with some relatively unknown people in it, people like Terry Sanford, Hugh Cannon, Al Adams, some other people. But that small firm, which had about 5 or 6 people when Bill joined them, has evolved into a much larger firm. Parker Poe now, the firm that Bill retired from, has well over 200 lawyers in 7 different cities. Bill had a lot to do with the growth in the Raleigh office. He was a pillar for us. He was a brilliant lawyer. He was state bar certified specialist in real property, had extensive practice and knowledge of business, commercial, real estate, and industrial transactions and co-op law. He was a great contributor to a lot of the early litigation in the firm, and was, I think you can look up Bill in all of the state and federal reporters in North Carolina and for the Fourth Circuit. But lest you think that Bill was simply a legal technician, there's a story about a client calling Bill and telling him that he had gotten a check returned for insufficient funds. So Bill said, "Well, I think I can deal with that." So Bill took the check down to the bank, and he managed to talk a teller into telling him how much money was in the account, which I don't think you're supposed to do, but in any event. So the teller told him, Bill put the difference out of his own pocket into the account between the check and what was in there, passed the check through, collected it, and took it back to his client. Now, that's a remedy you don't get taught about in law school. Bill loved his law firm family. Bill was a stellar contributor to nearly all the events around the firm. He was a great friend to all of us. There were times when you needed someone to talk to, and Bill was always available. But notwithstanding sometimes Bill's staid and formal demeanor, he had a understated sense of humor, and sometimes Bill was funny without meaning to be. One time, Bill saw an ad in the Wall Street Journal about some very fine, what were referred to as executive shoes. And the price was right, because one thing about Bill McCullough, he was frugal. The price was right, because you got 2 pairs for $30. So Bill ordered these shoes, and of course, was very proud of them, went around the office talking to people and pointing out his shoes, and that was all great. The only problem with the shoes was that when Bill got caught in the rain a couple of times, since they were made of polyester byproducts, there's no leather in them at all, they've sort of unraveled. But that's neither here nor there. Another time, Bill was concerned about the amount of money we were spending for artwork, when we were moving to the Raleigh Federal Building, and particularly some of the rather modern artwork that we had. And he had been by the Kmart to do some garden shopping. Bill was a great gardener. So he came back to the office and said, look, he said, you know, they've got really fine pictures down at Kmart, and they have already been framed. So the art committee told Bill that thanks a lot for the suggestion, but we're going to stick with what we've got. Bill was also the life of the party, particularly at firm events. I mean, he was all in whenever we would have anything going on. In particular, he was very fond of our early law firm retreats, attorney retreats at Emerald Isle. In particular, he enjoyed the after-dinner visits we had to the Emerald Isle Beach Club. As a matter of fact, he enjoyed the beach club so much and dancing that one time we were all leaving, going back in our cars, and somebody said, "Where's Bill?" So we realized Bill was still back at the beach club, so I had to go retrieve him. After that, because of his energy and his blue polyester pants that he loved, he got the nickname Mr. Excitement. And that became Bill's handle thereafter, was Mr. Excitement. One last story related to the firm. Bill's office was a complete mess. There were papers everywhere. There was no other office like it in any of the offices at the firm. So one time, our then managing partner told his new assistant that while Bill was out of town, it would be a really good idea if she could clean it up. Well, this lady was brand new. She didn't have any idea about Bill's need to have an office like that. So she cleaned it up. She cleaned up the desk, the floors, the shelves, everything. Bill came back and almost had a stroke. He basically said, "I cannot practice in this office without my filing system the way I had it." And it's a good thing Bill had a nearly photographic mind, because he couldn't find anything else in that office under those circumstances. It all worked out. He went back to his regular filing system. Bill was a pillar of the Holy Trinity Lutheran Church. He did almost everything at the church. He was president of the church council, on various committees. He was very active with the music and worship committee in particular. Bill had an excellent voice, and he was an excellent pianist. As a matter of fact, Bill was a composer, and he composed several hymns. One of the hymns he composed was "Great is the Holy Trinity," which was performed as a memorial service. He was a very talented person. He also wound up serving 3 terms on the executive board of directors of the Lutheran Synod. Bill loved to collect church bulletin bloopers, and Paul and Laura put together a whole batch of them for his 80th birthday, but some of them are particularly funny. I thought you might enjoy them. One of them is, the preacher will preach his farewell message, after which the choir will sing "Break Forth with Joy." Another one was, at the evening service tonight, the sermon topic will be, "What is hell? Come early and listen to our choir practice." Bill was a passionate gardener with an immaculate yard and garden. He treated the garden the way he tended to his friends. His life, he was a lifetime learner and interested in the latest music, cultural trends, modern innovations. Bill was a positive person who loved his McCullough family, his law firm family, his church family, and his many other friends. He was a Renaissance man, as I think you can see. He was a true friend, mentor, and confidant who was there to celebrate our successes and provide sympathetic and wise counsel when we faced the inevitable storms of life. Bill McCullough was a fine lawyer and our inestimable friend. Thank you, Your Honor.
Our next honoree is Robert Anthony Mineo, and presentation will be by Athena Mineo.
So good afternoon. As he said, I'm Athena Mineo, and I'm here to honor my husband, Robert Anthony Mineo, and those of you who knew him know he went by Tony. Tony died of complications of a heart attack about a year ago. And when Margaret Curran first told me about the service that they had for the 10th Judicial Bar, I asked Tony's best friend in the bar, Randy Hill, if he would speak at the service. But I'm sad to say that between the time I asked Randy and today, Randy passed away of a heart attack also. So it's been a very sad time, but Randy and Tony met when they leased space together on Fayetteville Street, and about every day for many, many years they would go to lunch and they'd talk about politics and debate the world. And even though they don't go to lunch in heaven, there's no need. I'm sure they're happy to be, friends there together. So after Randy's death, I decided, well, who in the bar knew Tony better than I did? So I'll just come and share a few memories of my husband. So I met Tony in law school, and when I first met him, I thought, well, he's really not my type. He had the 1970s disco shirt, and the chain, and he wanted to go dancing because he knew I liked to go dancing, but poor thing could not dance. But even then, he had the persuasion of a lawyer. So he would take me to do things that he liked to do. He took me sailing, and he was an Olympic sailor, and he opened the world. And so it wasn't long till I fell in love with the sharp intellect and the loving spirit that Tony possessed. So Tony had a whole life before he knew me and before he joined the bar. He had obtained an aerospace engineering degree at NC State at age 19, and he served as a civil aircraft design engineer with the U.S. Department of the Navy for about 12 years. And he was the chief systems designer for the Harrier, the aircraft that lifts up, and he had gone to London and designed that system. And so when he came back, they put him in charge of the Harrier squad at Cherry Point, and he would have to go do all the crash investigations. And they would send him to the jungles of Vietnam to determine why the aircraft went down and why maybe he lost a friend. And I remember when we were in law school, I would get all nervous, as I am today, and when I had to recite a case or stand up, and Tony would just laugh and say, well, Athena, what are they going to do to you or me? They're not going to send us to Vietnam. And I was like, well, that's true. So I think it was that comfort and confidence that came out of life experiences that made him such a good orator in the courtroom. And Tony took his early life experiences and he brought them to the field of law. He successfully practiced in aviation law for about 36 years. And he started his legal career in Washington, D.C., but he really very soon became nationally known because he just was so good at what he did. He would travel to a crash site and he could tell you what caused it, and he could tell the expert what caused it, so the expert could then come in and tell the court. And he had a strong grasp of the nuances of law, and he could navigate the jurisdictional issues and the legal claims. And I remember he had one case, and there was Tony representing the pilot, and there were like 10 other big law firms, and they had all these other people representing the insurance companies and the passengers and the owners of the airplane. And finally the judge looked down to Tony and said, you're the only one that's going to recover because you're the only one that knows what's going on. So he was just really good at what he did. And one of Tony's favorite sayings was, I love the law. And you know what? I thought about that. I thought what he really loved was his clients. So I'm going to tell you about one case that he had. And it was over 20 years ago. But an American airline commuter jet crashed here in Raleigh. And Tony found that the pilot was inexperienced. And when she took off, she did not get the elevation she needed. And she just plunged the plane into the ground. Well, it killed everyone on board, including the only child, Chris, of Tony's clients, Linda and Burl. And this letter from Chris's father sat in Tony's office for many years. And I'd like to read it to you because I think it is a testament to the integrity and to the compassion that Tony brought to the law field. Dear Tony, I have tried a number of times to express on paper my gratitude to you for the contribution you made in bringing closure to Chris's death. I'm actually aware that that contribution started 4 years ago, and piece by piece you assembled the puzzle which would give answers to many of the whys which existed for Linda and me. Your patience, determination, and most especially your compassion will remain forever a treasured keepsake in the wake of such a devastating tragedy. Each of us responds independently to grief, and I believe you are the true catalyst for helping Linda recover these past years. Please know your contribution to Linda far exceeded technical academics. Personally, I will always be grateful to you for the support and attention you so generously lavished on her those last years. Tony, for myself, I falter when I try to express the gift you gave me when you accompanied me to the airport. I loved my son with all my heart. However, I believe the day you accompanied me to the crash site was perhaps when I finally let go of the grief. I will always be grateful for your willingness to share such a potent experience with a father who lost his only child. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you.
Our next honoree is Hudson Jr., and to present IB is Jim Smith.
I was honored to be able to speak about my friend and colleague, Abby Hudson. For 30 years, Isham Barney Hudson Jr. served as a lawyer on the staff of the Attorney General of North Carolina. Abby, as he was known to his friends and acquaintances, was born in Little Rock, Arkansas, in the home of his maternal grandmother on June 6, 1929. His father, Isham Barney Hudson, was in law school in North Carolina, and his pregnant wife had traveled to Arkansas to be with her family while awaiting the birth of their son. His father joined them 3 months after his namesake was born. While the family was still in Arkansas, the stock market crashed, compelling Abby's father to borrow money to pay for his return trip to North Carolina. Except for the brief period of his infancy and his tour of duty in the Marine Corps, Abby resided in North Carolina for the rest of his life. He grew up in Andrews, where his father, who was admitted to the bar but never practiced law, taught school and was superintendent of the county school system. IB attended elementary school in Andrews, but traveled to high school in Lumberton so that he could play cornet in the school band. He was president of the Lumberton High student body and valedictorian of his class. He was in the fall, IB entered Duke University, where he was graduated Phi Beta Kappa and received the Bachelor of Arts degree. After graduation from Duke, IB joined the Marine Corps. It was during the Korean War, and he was a second lieutenant. He was awarded the Purple Heart Medal for injuries incurred in combat. IB was influenced to become a lawyer by an uncle, Frank Chowning, who was an attorney in Little Rock. After being honorably discharged from the Marine Corps, IB entered UNC School of Law, from which 3 years later he was graduated with a Bachelor of Laws degree. He was admitted to the bar in 1956. For a brief period, IB was associated with J. Bruce Ewer in Whiteville, but moved to Asheville, where he practiced with Uzell and Dumont. While in Asheville, IB was an avid hiker and a member of the Carolina Mountain Club. While hiking in the woods, he met another hiker, Connie Nieder, who was to become his wife, but not until 1968, when both of them had moved to Raleigh. In the interim, they often hiked together in the North Carolina mountains and on the Appalachian Trail. As long as they were able, Abby and Connie continued to hike over much of the United States and in Canada. Abby joined the staff of Attorney General Wade Bruton in 1964. He was a trial attorney for the State Highway Commission and later for the Department of Insurance. He represented the Commissioner of Insurance for several years, during which he was famed among his colleagues as having only a single appellate victory. One day, returning from court, Abby was asked by a colleague how things went. Abby responded, "It's not the quality of the law that counts, it's the quality of the client." Notwithstanding his win-loss record, his intelligence and knowledge of law were well recognized by those who knew him or worked with him. In 1981, Attorney General Lacey Thornburg instituted the Special Litigation Section to handle complex or especially controversial civil litigation. IB transferred to the new section as one of the first lawyers employed there. He worked under Senior Deputy Attorney General Gene Benoit, also a Marine Corps veteran, and the two shared many experiences. IB represented state agencies in cases assigned to him. He was also a mentor and advisor to younger section members who sought his advice and counsel. Several years after retirement, IB wrote in his own ironic and understated manner, "I recall many happy moments practicing law. They usually occurred when the witnesses you coached performed admirably at deposition or trial. You could then bask in their glory, confidence that truth and justice would prevail." IB retired in 1994 as a Senior Deputy Attorney General. At his retirement, Governor Jim Martin conferred upon him the Order of the Longleaf Pine, and in a rare and perhaps singular recognition of service to the state in the trial and appellate courts, all 7 sitting justices of the state Supreme Court attended his state retirement. IB died on February 9, 2017. The service of remembrance was conducted at White Memorial Presbyterian Church, which the Hudsons attended and where for many years IB sang in the choir. The large church was packed with those remembering and honoring him. As one who worked closely with him said, IB was a man of distinction and honor. He was wise and humble. While not a man of many words, his words were well selected and worth noting. He will be remembered by his family, friends, and colleagues as someone who made a difference both in our lives and in the world. IB is survived by Connie, his wife of 48 years, his daughter, Catherine Hudson, and granddaughter, Hallie Circum. Thank you.
Final honoree today is Gerald Lane Bass, presented by Colin Willoughby.
Please, the court. It's my privilege today to talk about my friend Gerald Bass. Gerald Lane Bass was born in Wilson County and grew up in Craven County. And he used to joke with me about it and say that he would have grown up in Raleigh, but he felt like he should be close to his mother at the time, and so he didn't come. He graduated from high school in New Bern in 1953 and joined the United States Army. He served active duty in Korea. After mustering out of the Army, he enrolled in UNC at Chapel Hill and was died in the Wool Tar Heel. He graduated from there in 1959 and promptly enrolled in the law school and completed law school and finished in 1962. And 1962 was a tough year on the bar exam. Gerald passed the bar exam. There was a lot of folks that didn't get there that year, but he graduated comfortably and went on to be one of the first clerks for Federal District Judge John Larkin down in Trenton. He served clerkship with Judge Larkin, and then went in the United States Attorney's Office as an assistant United States attorney, and for about 5 years traveled around eastern North Carolina prosecuting criminal cases and defending the U.S. government in their civil lawsuits. He left the Attorney General's office in the early 70s to join the prominent law firm of Young, Moore and Henderson. He did a lot of civil defense work, and he always spoke so highly of Charlie Young and Joe Moore and B.T. Henderson. They were friends, but they were people in whom he held in enormous respect for their legal ability and their professionalism, and just a special affection between them. Gerald left the Young, Moore and Henderson after a few years and hung out his shingle in Raleigh as a solo practitioner. Practiced solo for several years. Shared office space with some folks who, friends of his, C.K. Brown, Spencer Barra, Carter Mackey, and a number of other lawyers that practiced over in the BB&T building at 333 Fayetteville Street. And they and he really enjoyed the practice of law and the camaraderie they had with each other. It was it wasn't quite a fraternity house over there in the BB&T building, but there were lots of folks coming and going. People were friendly. They enjoyed each other's company. They enjoyed handling cases together. Gerald had a growing practice of litigation practice. He handled federal criminal work, state criminal work, personal injury work, domestic relations matters, personal injury, and some transactional work involving real estate and decedents' estates, business matters. And on one occasion, Judge Howard Manning Jr. had appointed him to be a referee in a large class action lawsuit to resolve the claims, which he enjoyed and took particular pleasure in being able to pay all the claims and still have funds available from the money that had been provided. My involvement with Gerald began in 1978. I was an intern in the district attorney's office, and he had a busy criminal practice and was in criminal court almost daily. We struck up an acquaintance and got to be friendly. And in 1979, I finished law school. Gerald offered me a job, and I made what was probably the second luckiest decision after the decision to marry my wife, Tricia, to join Gerald in practicing law. And 4 months later, after being an associate, he came and told me, he said, I want us to be partners, and we formed a partnership and practiced law together for 7 years. The partnership later included Burke Haywood. It was a great time to be practicing law, a great time to be here in Raleigh, and it was fun to practice with Gerald and with Burke. And he went on to, after I left, went on to practice with some other folks, Judge Bill Pittman here and some other lawyers. But he was, I can't describe what a great partner he was. In the 7 years we were together, we had one disagreement. In 1 year, he decided that he thought I should make more money than the partnership agreement called for, and so he insisted on giving more money. And that's the kind of generous spirit that Gerald had. He was an effective and skilled trial lawyer. He had an incredible memory for dates and events. He could remember birthdays or public current events, things that had happened. He could remember call out the day and the year. He was a zealous advocate for his clients. And he had a wide variety of clients. He represented prominent business people, learned professionals, some professional criminals, and some regular everyday folks, and indigent people who could not have paid for his services, but he represented them anyway. He didn't shy away from vigorously defending them, and whatever their conduct had been or wherever it was. I remember early on, we'd been practicing a few months, and he was representing a man charged in the Eastern District of North Carolina with securities fraud. And we didn't have many securities fraud cases back then, but he was trying a case in front of Judge Frank Dupree. And Judge Dupree and Gerald argued about the law, and it got so strong and so vigorous, I thought that he would hold Gerald in contempt, put him in jail. And it was very frightening to me because I was thinking, here's my partner and he's getting ready to get locked up. But even more frightening was I was going to have to try that case, and I didn't know anything about it. But I learned later how much he and Judge Dupree enjoyed the banter in the courtroom, the going back and forth, that they respected each other and had that relationship from when he was a prosecutor, and it was just a kind of fun. It took a few years before I really understood how that dynamic worked, but it was enlightening and a little bit scary for a young lawyer. But Gerald tried many cases regularly, almost weekly, with other good lawyers. Some prosecutors, some defense lawyers, some civil lawyers. He tried lots of domestic relations cases and had cases with some of the same lawyers over and over. They would have cases together. Howard Manning Sr., Robert Howard, Ben Clifton, Carter Mackey, Jack Gully, Jack Hunter, and others. And they all just seemed to enjoy being in the courthouse, trying cases together. And they finished one case, and then they would have another case in a few months and be right back at it. But they really enjoyed the practice of law. I don't know that spirit always exists in the practice, but it did here, and Gerald was part of that. He loved to laugh and have a good time, and he liked to entertain lawyers with funny stories. He would often make himself the brunt of the joke to entertain folks. But one of the funniest ones that he really enjoyed was he received a computer-generated fundraising letter from the sitting president, and they addressed it, as the computers did back then, to Mr. Gerald B. Ass. And he thought that was the funniest thing. He kept that letter for years. He would show it to people and laugh and entertain. Enjoyed watching them laugh. But he enjoyed that kind of good humor, and he did not mind telling something on himself in order to entertain folks. Gerald was an avid Tar Heel. He loved the Tar Heels, and he enjoyed their successes. And on occasion, he had been known to drop a note to a football coach that didn't live up to his expectations. The previous Saturday, he would mention it. But I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about his family. Gerald loved his family, and he was incredibly proud of them. His beautiful wife, Mary Ann, who's here today, and he talked about what a wonderful mother and wife she was, about her tennis prowess and how she was such a great athlete. He talked about his daughters, Elisa and Mariana. He was so proud of them, their accomplishments at Ravenscroft and later in college at Salem and Chapel Hill. And then when his grandchildren came along, Elizabeth and Alan and Mary Ellis, they were the smartest and best children that had ever been born. He could not have been prouder of them. Now his habits and his practices and maybe at the time would include taking time to go to lunch with other lawyers at Hudson Belk or Cooper's. He would have coffee with his friends, sometimes lawyers, sometimes folks outside the profession, but they would stop at mid-morning sometimes and have coffee together. And he brought a spirit and sense of duty to the practice of law, to me and to a lot of other people that were practicing law at the time. I think Gerald was especially pleased when he was recognized by the bar a few years ago as a 50-year lawyer for having practiced 50 years here in Wake County. And he took his role in our community and the profession and the call for professionalism very seriously, and he took that to heart. I could probably go on and talk about Gerald for a long time, but he taught me a number of things. He taught me to try cases. He taught me to keep your word. He taught me that your adversary is not your enemy. And he taught me how important it was to have a partner on whom you could rely. He was truly a talented lawyer, a wonderful partner, and a true friend to me and to so many other lawyers here in Wake County. No.
Mr. Oaten, if you don't mind, if I can inject one thing, I had a bet with one of my colleagues for a nickel about whether Mr. Willoughby would tell that story about that letter. I'm happy to report that I won the bet. So thank you, Mr. Willoughby.
Well, that concludes today's program. Thank you to all our presenters for their thoughtful words and the shared memories. And I want to thank all the members of the Memorials Committee for their continued exceptional work in putting these sessions together. Many thanks to our videographer, Brian Miller of Front Runner Productions, Sharla Sharp and Whitney Von Ham of the 10th Judicial District in the Wake County Bar. To your honor for presiding over this session, Clerk Knox and her staff, thank you so much, and Mr. Bailiff, appreciate your assistance. And of course, to all the friends and family that have joined us here today for this very special occasion. And with that, I will turn this back over to you, Judge.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oaten. Since you thanked everybody, you pretty much left me with nothing else to say except to thank you. This is a very worthwhile thing that we do, to come together and remember these folks, and celebrate their lives. I've been attending these ceremonies as long as I can remember, and I always get a whole lot out of it, and today's no exception. Thank you all for being here. It's a very worthwhile thing that we do. That's all I've got. So, Mr. Sheriff, if you would please adjourn this special ceremonial session of Wake County Superior Court, sine die.
All right. Oh, yes, oh, yes, oh, yes. This Honorable Superior Court for the County of Wake now stands adjourned. Sine die. God save the state and this honorable court.
Thank you.